Hello and welcome to the last word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We are back on the back of Spurs, making it 3 wins in the Premier League for the first time since December 2023. God, the dizzying heights of December 2023. Settle down, cover your seats. We've got you covered. We're joined by 3 of the best therapists you can find in the Spurs community that we've grabbed them all together and bunched them up. Listen, we're joined by Jason McGovern, who is waiting to be deported to Thailand airport as soon as he possibly can. I'm joined by actor. Is he the next Bond? He is in the Spurs community. He is TJ Ramini. He's back on your screens. As his film director, our TV man, Simon Yemane, returns on this episode of Last Word on Spurs as Spurs give Ipswich a thumping at Portman Road. If you're with us for the very, very first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on X, we're on Instagram, and we're on Facebook too. We're going to bring in these wonderful guests, but let's bring in firstly the match, facts, and the stats of Spurs thumping Ipswich at Portman Road. It finished Ipswich 1, Tottenham 4. Ipswich the dominant side in terms of the shots on target, 17-10. Spurs edging its shots on target, 5-6. Touches in the opposition box, Ipswich shading that one 26-23. Spurs, the more accurate out of the two sides passing, 458 to 291. Final third entries, Ipswich were the more dominant side at 56-41. Corners they shared 4 apiece. Tottenham shading possession 59% to 41%. And XG Tottenham up on 1.79 to Ipswich's 1.26. It is a very positive panel on Last Word on Spurs that have kept their heads, whilst it's fair to say I've been losing mine over the course of the last 10, 12 months. It's fair to say with this bloody football club. Let's bring in Jason McGovern, who I can tell for our listeners on audio has got in his little caption you can do on this show, relegation with a crying face, almost insinuating, what were we ever worried about? Look, Jace, we were pushed hard by a decent Ipswich side, but I think superior quality told in terms of the game itself. Johnson with a brace, nice couple of goals for him. Jed Spence once again, the star of the show, which was great to see. But players like Bentancur, Kulusevski also impressing. Vicario's passion can't be underestimated. As we said, a third straight win in the Premier League and an improvement that, along with Ange Postecoglou, you also predicted would come when Spurs players return from injury. And also a nice little stat out there for a lot of those folk that love a day like this. Tottenham win and Arsenal lose on the same day for the first time since the 9th of October when Spurs beat West Ham at home, which seemingly isn't for everyone. Jace, we'll open with you. Thoughts on that win over Ipswich?
I think without getting too carried away, like I've said, it's amazing, isn't it? You got 5 or 6 players back. You got a free week. You got proper training sessions with proper match intensity. You can make substitutions off the bench, and hey presto, Tottenham are winning. And then there's a club down the road that's got 4 of their front players out, like we've had 10 to 14 out most of the times this season. And suddenly they struggle to break down Leicester. They can't break down West Ham at home, and they start dropping points. And you know, probably without doing it, it's as simple as that, mate. Having players back able to compete physically gives us a chance. And just when other teams start to struggle for the same reasons that we've been struggling, and we've had to get on with it. And you know, you've seen Man City picking up injuries in the week. They get dumped out the Champions League. It's not rocket science. It really, really isn't. And it's just nice to be. It's 9 points out of 9, which is fantastic. And just a reminder that the people that were going onto Amazon and buying a noose when we lost to Everton, screaming the relegation word, we're as clear as relegation now as we were that day. Those teams behind us are still on 17 points like they were after the Everton game, and those teams are still on target to hit 24 points, which is what we had after the Everton game. So I don't know, the people that were thinking we were in a relegation battle when we lost to Everton, because we were 16th in the table, give your heads a wobble. We're now 16 points clear of relegation from teams that have only got 17 points all season. So by my reckoning, we can lose the last 13 and still be 10 points clear of relegation. So can we stop using that poxy word as if that some people were on, and it's just great, isn't it? Some of the whatever side of the camp you're in, if you haven't been able to look at the last 10 weeks and have some degree of context into it, and now you see the differences you're able to make, it's again, you're foolish if you've been losing your heads in that run. And today I felt like the Villa and that Liverpool games, when we had no Solanke, a lot's made of Van der Ven and Romero's injury. We played those 2 ties with no Maddison, no Johnson, no Solanke. They've got 36 goals between those 3 players this season. We had none of them, even on the bench, for those 2 cup ties. And if only we'd have had a couple of those back, I still think probably Liverpool go through, but we'd have been a much better side at Villa to having at least 2 of them, even on the bench or something, would have given us a chance. And I think you're just seeing it now. Players back, things are looking a lot better. We haven't turned a corner. There's still a lot wrong with this team, but we're nowhere near as bad as that 10-game run was people were telling me.
I mean, I think for those out that saw the Friday night graphic that flashed up from Sky, when you saw Ipswich's run of games, and then there was a Spurs in there. Look, there was an argument, I think, as we said, if Tottenham maybe would have done business earlier or whatever, as we discussed in the window, and all things that come into that, who knows where it would be. But at Spurs have got the win. Tease to bring you in. It wasn't pretty, but for Tottenham, it was job done. And Brennan Johnson netting twice on his old stomping ground. His father before, of course, done the same thing. There was Jed and Dejan Kulusevski were really a key duo to seal those points. And overall, really good team performance from Tottenham. I know Jason said that we haven't turned the corner, but it is 3 wins out of the last 3 in the Premier League. That we haven't done, as I mentioned, at the back end of 2023. You've got to go back to. So it does feel that there's a certain level of we are easing ourselves back into Premier League form when you look at the fact it's 3 wins on the bounce, Tej. How do you see it?
Yeah, absolutely right. And again, Jason made all the points so succinctly. It is interesting, isn't it, how football fans react so differently to various scenarios, to various recruitment, to various players, to various systems, various managers, what have you. And I said it the last time I was on the show, it's kind of boring to keep saying, we got 13 senior players out. And so this is where we are. And that's kind of the end of the debate. I know it's much more fun or perhaps sort of lambastic or dramatic or combustive to say, well, our manager doesn't have a clue what he's doing, or this player isn't good enough, or this person, again, to Ange's point about when he said, they want people's head on a plate. It's just sort of a cultural shift where a lot of people are these days, is that we want to immediately assign blame to an individual or to a set of individuals, rather than just kind of looking at statistics and facts and saying, well, with this many players injured, what would any manager do? And so, again, just to Jason just said it, we now have options. Again, we don't know what happens even at training sessions. So as the coaching staff are looking at all these fit players, I think the coaches could say, boss, we could run this drill now because we've got Johnson back and Maddison back and we've got Udogie back and we've got Vicario back. Should we run this drill that we haven't been able to run for 2.5 months when we've been playing 3 games every 10 days? So that's the difference, is that we do have good players. We do have a competent manager who can manage at this level. We now have the options where we've given him enough cards where he can reshuffle the deck should he choose to. And the results speak for themselves. And so, listen, I think Ipswich were fantastic today. To your point, Rick, I just think they just lacked a little bit of quality, especially in the back, and they just looked a little tired because, my goodness, what an energetic young team. I think Kieran McKenna has done a superb job with them. My goodness, absolute warriors they were today, but we were just a little bit too much for them. We'll talk about Brennan Johnson later, because I also have something to say about him, but we'll leave that for later. Love to be back on the show.
Tej, thank you so much. A lot of love out there got to say for Tej in the last few days. Will we see the next Bond? That's the question. Is Tej our next James Bond?
You heard it here. You heard
we
it.
got to look everyone else to Hollywood the way she's going. Bless our hearts. Si, bringing you in. Look, it's Tottenham February comeback continued, isn't it, really? You know, Ange's team run out winners. It was a hard-working performance against an Ipswich side that, I think, as we've touched upon there, maybe lacked the quality in this game to really get anything out of it. And I think the key is that there was some really good displays in there, and a few players actually grew into the game. The likes of Spence, Bergvall, I mean, Gray, to be fair. We'll come on to the opening minutes of that game where, for those that missed the opening minutes, you'll be glad you did miss the opening minutes, because me and TJ were messaging thinking, what have we just walked into? It was absolutely nuts, the start to this game. Just a typical Tottenham start to a season. But we'll come on to Si about this. I mean, Si, look, I know, again, I'll make that point at the start of the show. Our fan base is a unique one. I love them very much, and we all love them very, very much. But it's fair to say that there is a number of us, and I probably include myself in this, that can lose their heads very, very quickly at the point of a crisis. I know that you're a man that does maybe normally take a bit more of a backward seat and can look maybe, you know, at the bigger picture. Is it kind of what you expect inside that players were to come back? We were going to see a level of performance, because to be fair, the reason why I ask you that, as I'm sure you're aware, is when we look back at Spurs' second half of last season, when players did return, we didn't really see much of an uplift. Now we've got 3 wins out of 3. Do you feel that we are going to really, as Jason has alluded to, actually significantly turn a corner maybe in the coming weeks? We know we'll come on to it later in the show. We've got Europe to also add into the mix of having to balance the Thursday-Sunday debate as well.
Yeah, I think these guys, I mean, put it perfectly. And I almost don't have a lot of things to add. But the thing that I will add is we've talked a lot about the injuries and having players coming back. But I think as big a part of that has had is the fact that we're only playing once a week. And the fact that the players that we have had, like Son, like Porro, like Kulusevski, they've had a full week of training and a full week of rehab and a full week of resting and having some days off. Ange spoke about this in the press conference, just feeling like they can settle down and focus on something much more manageable. And I think, I mean, even if we logically knew that we were never going to win 4 competitions, even if we were in these 4 competitions, we were always going to, you know, go out of some of these competitions. And, you know, when it happens during a crisis, an injury crisis and a form crisis, it becomes so much more worse, but it's also just logical. And so, I mean, I came into this game looking at the performance, focusing much more on the performance other than the result, because we all know that there's not a lot of things that we can do in the league in terms of getting Europe through the league. Looking at the point tally that we have now, how many points we have left to play for, I think we have something like 35 plus points, something around 35 points
23.
to play for.
Yeah. Oh, 25 to play for, yeah.
Exactly, which in a perfect world, if we go 12 for 12, we could still end up pretty close to where we ended up last year. But we know that's not how this season's going to end, because we need to focus on this big tournament, these knockout stages that are coming up in Europe. So let's say we get 50, that takes us around 8th. So we're going to end up somewhere between 12th and 8th. And so the big focus for us is Europe. And so this game today and the game against City will be about everything that these guys are talking about. How do we look when we get our players back? And I think that we've seen I think we've seen our performances look much more. We've looked much more like the team we want to be. Much more control, much more in control, much more ball dominant, better in the press, better playing out from the back. We've looked like Tottenham again. And so that's my focus, together with looking at how Ange rests players, if he's going to rotate the right type of players. And so looking through this game and the United game from last week, I think we've seen these positive signs start to show up. So, yeah, I'm over the moon. I think it was important to win this game. You know, when the performance is good, the result is often good too. And just having some goals coming in and us just winning a game and building that confidence is going to be super important for Europe coming up.
Yeah. One of those players that we've touched upon, really, to be fair, who's been consistent for quite a while, is in the spotlight at the moment for all the right reasons. It's pleasing to say, Jace, is that of Jed Spence. You know, the calls for an international call-up are getting louder and louder right now with Jed. I think it's fair to say, as we've touched upon, as I've mentioned here on a number of shows recently, he's been such a consistent performer for Tottenham. You look at that game and in general now, 2 player of the match awards, 2 clean sheets and a goal across 3 games. He's got a real strong contender to probably be the club's player of the month, let alone, Spurs fans at full time, they sang Super Jed to him personally. He's, I'd say, scored the all-important 3rd goal in this game. It's his first in the Premier League to end that Ipswich resistance. And there is probably a case now, real good growing calls now for an England call-up. This game alone, 1 goal, 2 out of 2 in terms of successful dribbles, 4 out of 6 ground duels, 1 clearance, 1 interception, 5 ball recoveries, 2 fouls, 1, no fouls committed from Jed. A pretty, got to say, flawless performance from Jed. How good is he, Jace, for you at the moment, Jed Spence? Because you've seen a lot of good fullbacks at Tottenham.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see. And I think if you watched the embargo press conference, he spoke quite a bit about him and how he's, the change in attitude in around him, and that, they haven't done much to him technically and things. That a lot of the mental things that he's improved, if you like, have come from him. And I think even when we saw him pre-season play well, we just said it's not a question of talent with Jed Spence. It's can you get the attitude right? From the moment we had the famous picture he put up after that playoff when smoking the cigar with the little aimed thing at Neil Warnock. It was, the question marks about Jed Spence have only ever been about his attitude and his, suitability to play rather than his technical abilities. But, we're seeing him with power, we're seeing him with pace. He's excellent taking players on. His defensive awareness is really good. So, at the moment, if you look at our 3 fullbacks, he's definitely the best one of the 3 because he's probably the better one defensively, and you still get lots of quality from him. I think he's probably through playing regularly, he's got some rhythm, he's got some confidence. Confidence within the players that he's playing with is a huge thing. Respect to the playing group, respect to the coaching staff is a huge thing, and he's reaping the rewards of that. And the next stage will be to first of all to get that call up, and then the key thing for him then is when he does get that call up, he just needs to maintain these levels. Don't slip back to the old Jed Spence of the first 2 years where you think, I've made it now, boys. I've picked up 2 or 3 man of the match bricks. I've got an England cap. No more pictures of cigars in dressing rooms as a mock at that. Take it now and think, right, what have I done to put myself in this position, and keep doing it week in, week out, and don't fall back to the old ways. And if he does that, we've got one hell of a player on our hands.
Do you see enough, Jay, to show you so far? That's maybe hard to measure it to some extent, that should he get that England call, do you back him to be able to still keep the form that he's showing right now? Or is that something you can only judge given that time?
You can only judge when that happens. I mean, there's a vacancy there because Trippier's more or less finished as an England player, and Carl Walker's main strength as a right back was his power and pace.
Yep.
If Tuchel wants to go down the route of out and out quality, then it's hard to look beyond Trent. But he has the qualities to be the power and pace like Carl Walker was, but with a little bit more ability. And don't underestimate those talents and qualities at all. But he's still got to get in front of Trent, and Trent's a brilliant player with the ball. But we all know with Trent that there's a massive weakness in his game defensively. So he's got a fantastic chance, but don't let it go to your head.
No, as he did in that 3rd goal, quite literally that celebration, which was a great celebration from Jed, I've got to say. Teach, coming over to you. Jed said after the game, I feel good. I feel confident game by game. I feel I'm getting better and better. It's just a consistency of playing. I just need to keep on going like that, and I'm not going to settle for anything less. I mean, his attitude, the way he talks, the way he acts, what we're seeing on the field, it's all first class, isn't it? And that is now being transcended, and as we see from our eyes, on the pitch and the way he's playing.
Yes, and first class is absolutely the accolade we can pay to this young man. I said on the last show, he's been an absolute revelation, and that's no great soothsaying or particular insight from me. Anybody who's ever watched this game, I think even if you hadn't watched this game, he would still catch one's eye. I mean, he's absolutely electric. I think with regard to the Trent Spence debate. I think, isn't it fun to say 3 months ago, who even thought we'd be having this conversation, right, Jay? But it's very much a conversation now. I suspect that people up and down the length and breadth of the country are having the same conversation. I think that one of the attributes, thank you, one of the attributes that Jed possesses that perhaps puts him in the top couple of percent in the world, and not just at that position, is his recovery pace. My goodness, he can give somebody 5 or 6 yards. He did it today. Yep. I can't remember who was through on goal. I think it was probably Delap, right? I can't remember who it was. They were breaking down the left. He was at right back at the time. And I mean, they were through. And he just went like Kyle Walker of old. And the reason why Kyle Walker held down that position for so long was because that was his number one attribute. He was almost a sort of, Mickey van der Ven pace, but, could do it without all of the springs popping out of his body. And so I think that he's such an exciting prospect. I'm also kind of delighted for his journey. You guys posted on your X feed today, Last Word on Spurs, X feed today, a very lengthy quote from Alistair Gold. I must admit that I skimmed it. It was very long. But it was basically Ange talking about how for some players, their journeys are different. And it happens to some players at different times and their motivations are different. And again, just a reminder that they are all human beings and, we are a precarious and mercurial species and we react differently to different things. And so I'm really pleased that he's having this moment just at the right time. Dare I say, again, people who are, wanting to throw Ange into a ditch or, into the sea or even perhaps something worse. Dare we say, well done, Ange Postecoglou, for taking this boy who was, seemingly cast out by so many previous managers and turned him into one of the best players in the country. I certainly praise Ange and his training staff for turning Jed into quite a miraculous player that we are extremely fortunate to have.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chid, you bring that debate up because right now that is probably one of the most controversial debates online. Jason's smiling right there. The fact that, is it a case that Jed finally got that breakthrough, or is it the case that Ange Postecoglou has maybe nurtured him behind the scenes and maybe made him work so hard for the opportunity that, of course, he now sees himself being given the opportunity, playing really, really well. I mean, sorry to bring you in.
I take him at his word. Sorry, before you go to side, yeah. I take him at his word because other managers with resumes that we could never even dream of couldn't make this boy. Couldn't set him off to the races. And so Ange saying, I was really, really, really tough with him. Perhaps that's what he needed.
Yeah. I know this is one again. I mean, Ange said in his presser before the game that, there's some critics out there that think everything I do right, it's by mistake. And everything I do wrong is deliberate. So he feels like he can't win at the moment. And look, that's where, a lot of people are with Ange Postecoglou. There's some that are very much Ange believers. There are some that are Ange doubters. And we're going to see how that pans out as Jason McGovern gives me a big smile down the lens there. Sorry to bring you in. Look, it's interesting because TJ goes back to that point, as Jason did there, that Ange did say in that embargo presser before the game, he made it purposely difficult for Jed Spence earlier in the season after deciding he wanted to keep the right back at the football club. He suggested that he could have at certain points maybe brought him in, but he made him work really, really hard behind the scenes to show him in training he was ready. Where are you on this debate? So I think I know where you're going to go. Is this a case of him working hard to get on that pitch?
I'm not being secretive about my support for Ange. I mean, I just love him as a leader and as a human being, and I also actually think like a lot of misconceptions around Ange would be, solved if more people just watch these pressers. Especially the embargo section, where he gets even more into depth. He gets in depth with his answers around players, around a lot of stuff that we talk about on podcasts and on Twitter and in WhatsApp groups. And I mean, how you receive that kind of information often, goes with how much you trust the club and how hurt you've been by other coaches that's been in charge. Listen, on Spence, I'm not English, as is obvious by my weirdly American accent. I'm Swedish, but on Spence, like the thing that I love about him for England, if he would to get that opportunity, is how versatile he is. I mean, he can play wing back, he can play fullback, he can play on both sides, he can be inverted, he can play traditional. He's super athletic and fast, but he's also strong, and he's incredibly tactical, incredibly technical. He's got a shot on him, and he's so young. And so I love the thought of him being seen as someone that can step up for England, because just looking at, you know, the options that I perceive that you guys have, he's basically, and Ange said this yesterday, he's basically, based on form, he's probably one of the best fullbacks in the league right now. And so for that reason, and the fact that he would be someone that could grow with this new team that Tuchel is going to build, and also the fact that Tuchel does play back four, back three, and stuff, makes him perfectly suitable. On Ange and him and his journey, I mean, I perceive myself as a pretty reasonable guy, and someone who, you know, work in an area where you deal with a lot of people and have to manage people and manage, you know, a lot of young people. And to me, everything he says about how you deal with different types of players and how he's dealt with different types of players from different cultures, and how he's changed as a man and as a manager, maybe being much more strict about how he wants a player to act, and how to play, how player, you know, trains, but me being much more, with age, becoming much more, you know, lenient and accepting and empathetic about players and people being different. That totally tracks for me. And it also tracks with what we know about him and what he wants in players. He wants players that are committed to the project and the club. And by giving him a tough road, seeing the talent, having him stay, giving him a real shot, but then being really tough on not just handing him a lot of playing time, but instead, you know, forcing him to prove himself. That's his way of letting a player that might not be as communicative as other players a chance to show that he wants to be there by not giving up, even though it's tough, and still believing that he has a place in the squad and a role to play in this team. So it all tracks, and by that measure, I would give him the credit. But I will also underline that Andrew's he said 99.9% of what we're seeing is Djed's. It's on Djed. He deserves the laudits for getting himself there. We just opened the door, and I'm extremely happy for him and for us that this is the player that came out on the other side.
Yeah, you do make a very good point there, Simon. I think there's a lot of stuff that comes up in a lot of those embargo press conferences that maybe for some, they maybe choose not to watch, or they maybe don't watch, just maybe out of the case haven't got the time to. But you know, I think the interesting part of that embargo press conference was that 95% of the questions of the embargo press conference was about Jed Spence from the previous week.
It was like 8 or 9 questions just about Jed. You could tell that the journalists were really into knowing exactly what happened.
And it goes back to that point, isn't it, with Ange? You know, the fact that, you know, you can understand maybe why he does get so frustrated by some of the pressers, that he does seem to be getting asked the same questions. But look, again, we know there's a regular run of the journalists that are there, the likes of Ali, Dan Kilpatrick, Tom Barkley, the likes, of course, of Jay over at Athletic, and obviously Jack Pitt-Brook. I don't want to leave anybody out. Sorry, guys, I'm already out there. The reality is that when you get more of the nationals that come down to those pressers, they're not acutely aware of what's been asked the previous week. And therefore, that's why you've got the same question being asked 2 or 3 times, because they aren't aware of what's going on. But Jed is playing very, very well at the moment. And look, we have to wait and see how that is going to pan out, because as we've touched upon, there's very few players in better form right now when it does come to the fullback options England do have. Look, we are going to squeeze in our first break of the show for our listeners and audio. We have got over 5,000 of you that are watching the show live. As always, thanks so much for incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. As I said at the start of the show, you've got three of the best Spurs therapists in the community, and we've bunched them all together. We've got Jason McGovern, who I said can't wait to get back to Thailand. He'll be telling you very, very soon. That's why he's smiling so much. We're joined by actor TJ Ramini. Oh, James Bond, whatever happens. Let's see what happens in the future. Keep those fingers crossed. And we're joined by the wonderful Simon Yemane, of course, TV and film director. Always a pleasure to have Simon on. That is normally calming the people down over on the platform that is X, where I can tell you, because Si's still there is some still sane people left on that platform, I can tell you. Look, want to talk about Heung-min Son. Jay's coming over to you because, you know, the Sonny that we saw definitely in the first half of that game is a Sonny that I think all of us can recognise to a player that we all have grown such fond affection for because the way he can really split defences and create opportunities. You know, there's no getting away from that. I think Sonny would admit himself he's not in the greatest of form right now. And I've picked up from a lot of Korean media that Son himself, I'm sure, is frustrated. And I think, again, it's not easy for a player with Sonny that's given his best years to the football club. And by having those couple of assists in this game, it now means that he's got at least 20 goal involvements in all competitions in his last 9 seasons for Spurs. And again, I will just read these out to you because, again, remind you of just what Sonny's done at the football club. You go to the 16-17 season, he had, 21 goals, 7 assists. 17-18 season, 18 goals, 11 assists. 18-19 season, 20 goals, 9 assists. 19-20, 18 goals, 11 assists. 20-21, 22 goals, 15 assists. 21-22, 24 goals, 8 assists. 22-23 season, 14 goals, 6 assists. 23-24 season, 17 goals, 10 assists. And the 24-25 season, he sits on 10 goals, 10 assists, which, to be fair, when you're looking at the past decade, it's an incredible output. And maybe a reminder, Jace, for this game alone, he's still got a lot to offer for this Spurs squad, even when there's doubts there. And again, I will make that point. We were playing against an Ipswich side that were fighting for their lives, that needed the points. And I think as we've seen this season with Ipswich, it's not, in terms of that phrase you all sometimes use yourself, it's not an easy place to go.
No, I think there's lots you can take from Sonny today. I think there's a bit of freshness for him after a couple of weeks as well, because he was playing out in his legs. He had to play as a number 9 a couple of games during that injury crisis, which we know doesn't really suit him now. So he was back where I think he probably is his best position now. His numbers this season, despite his overall performances, he'll be disappointed with his performances. We know he hasn't reached the level of performances, and yet he still has an incredible influence on this team in terms of the numbers that he generates. But just that freshness, I think he's really felt the weight of being a captain this year with the run that we've been on. He may not show in his leadership qualities and such on the pitch in the way people do. He may not run around shouting and hollering, but he's the type of person that wears that responsibility, and it weighs heavy on him when the team's going wrong and he's the captain. And the sight of the Everton debacle, if you like, with the fans, although that might have been a little bit misconstrued, but having to stand there and face and listen to all that was going on and front up. When the team's doing badly, your own confidence is down, you're going out of cups, it feels heavy for him. But I think the break's done him good. He had that confidence to take players on today. He's been written off by most people now as past his best. I think he probably is past the best levels, but he's maybe not as far down the hill as one or two people have suggested he is this year. He can still be an incredible influence, but he's probably a player now that we have to manage his load. And when you look at those European games coming up, we may well have to wear a few defeats in amongst it. We've got Bournemouth at home, Wolves away, West Ham away, between the legs of, if you like, of the next rounds in Europe. We may well have to say, look, rest one or two of those players up for those games so that we're fully focused on the 2 legs either side of those games. And what we don't want is Sonny to have to play 270 minutes in those weeks. And I think, the opportunity now with a few players back is that we can give him a rest, and we may well see the better version of Sonny that we've wanted to see all season. But it was great to see him taking players on and things like that in that first half. And it's the Sonny, a little bit more the Sonny we know today. But, there's still a lot of football to be played. I think he'll still have a big influence over the rest of the season.
And he's still here for you next season, Jay, Sonny?
Is he?
Still here for you next season, Sonny?
Yeah, for me, he definitely is. But it's managing minutes and giving him breaks at the right times that's important, and keeping fresh and keeping ready to play. I still think he's capable of playing in the big games for us.
Yep.
But then, a game like today, in next season's time, when it's been a European week or something like that, you say, Sonny, you're on the bench, and if we need you to come off, we do. But just manage his minutes a little bit better.
Yeah, we'll come on to Sonny in a bit more detail. Obviously, we're going to look at the game itself. I want to bring on to Brennan Johnson. I know, Tej, you were looking to say a few words on Brennan. Again, back in the goal-scoring run for him that, again, he became accustomed to before his recent injury. Trademark position to stab home his opening goal from Sonny's low cross. He then found himself unmarked to fire home what ended up being his 14th goal of the season not so long after. He did have a chance to steal the hat-trick in the early part of the second half, but a last gasp Ipswich block denied him. He did come off on the hour mark, with 2 goals under his belt. Brennan Johnson, a player that I think it's fair to say does polarise the fan base at times. We've seen he can go on a goal-scoring run. We can see he can be, at times, really frustrating for some Spurs fans. What do you make of Brennan's performance for you?
More than fair to say that, Rick. We've talked about how Johnson, I don't know what it is about him, why he attracts the level of criticism, which often crosses into vitriol from a portion of the fan base. A very young man, works very hard, diligently seems to go about his business. And also, how many goals is that now? 13, 14?
14 goals.
Right.
14 goals this season.
People constantly say this. Whatever sport they're into, they'll say, fill in the gap is the hardest thing to do in sport. We're football people. We're on a football podcast. So I'm going to say putting the ball in the back of the net's the hardest thing to do in sport, right? This kid seems to do it with a regularity and a kind of laissez-faire attitude. And it isn't an easy thing to do, especially at the very highest level of the game. And I think we can all go on the record and say, without a shadow of a doubt, the Premier League is the most competitive football league on the planet. I've said before, whether people want to agree, I think it's actually easier to win the Champions League than it is to win the Premier League. It's that difficult. And so the fact that this boy manages to find space and then also manages to pop the ball into the back of the net, that's a really rare skill. You know how you'll often hear commentators talking about a forwards movement and using they have to gamble there analogy. So it's a very particular skill. I play this game a lot, obviously to no standard at all. But I think that having the kind of mindset, even at the professional level, because so few strikers or forward players do it, when they really do have the idea, I'm gonna gamble that this defender will miss that header, or I'm going to gamble that it will go through that defender's legs, and so I'll make that run to the back post or to the near post. I think there's almost kind of like a sixth sense kind of ability that some players, Gary Lineker had it, the kind of fox in the box type striker that I not only am going to foresee that this person is going to miss a ball that they shouldn't miss, I'm going to get myself into that position, and if they do miss it, I'm going to pop it into the back of the net. And so I have a lot of love for Brennan Johnson, especially because he's a young man who came in with a very high fee, which again is not his doing. That's the sports. That's nothing to do with him. He comes from a family of footballers. That's added responsibility, and he's come in and done a job for us. And so let's give him his love, man. Let's get behind this boy and say, thank you, Brennan. We're going to support you and hope you become better and better with each passing season that you're in a Tottenham shirt.
Yeah. I might be wrong saying this. I feel like maybe a few years ago or back before social media, I feel like there was maybe a lot more patience with players. I mean, it was even at a point where I used to have to clap Adebayor just to get him to run up some point. So I'm thinking now with Brennan Johnson, he scores 10 goals in a row, and I'm thinking, God, he's not good enough. I mean, what is it? Side there. Go on, Jace.
Just in that, apparently we've bought a complete dub now in Matisse Tell. He's the new one. Matisse Tell's done nothing. Why are we possibly spending 50 million? Why are we loaning this bloke? He's this, he's that. So he's already taken over from Johnson as the next boo boy target.
Bad, is it? But we're talking about minutes rather than
we were going
games.
absolutely ape shit that we might not get him, and now we've got him, we don't want him. It's just that's football for you.
Yeah, and that's Jason not on X. Can I just tell you, it's got that scene.
No,
That
exactly.
imagine if he was on X. He's glad he's having a break from X. Sai is on X, unfortunately, so Sai sees it all. Sorry, Sai. Brennan Johnson, Sai, let's stick with you, because after the game, Ange was asked about the fact it's a couple of goals for Brennan. He's come back from injury and said that for him, it's really good for Brennan. We don't really have another forward player in the front third like him. He just knows, and back to, again, the point TJ said here, and said he just knows when to arrive at the right time. He's really clinical. It's just great to see him get back and get an hour out of his belt. For him, he's missed a lot of football. I'm sure he'll feel really, really good after this game. I mean, touch on it there, side again. I know Brennan Johnson's one that you see a lot on social media. It seems to get a lot of pelters. I think, look, to balance that argument out, I think the thing with Brennan is that he's got the capability of scoring. I think he's just got a tendency sometimes of just going completely and utterly missing in a game. And I think that's where, again, for certain players like him, that I've had the same issues with Maddison in the past, that what I want to see is that when this team go a goal down or there's a bit of adversity, I need these players to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and lead us through the difficult moments. And I think that's a question mark that's still against Brennan Johnson right now. And I suppose until he does that, that will always be their side. Is that a fair argument?
Yeah, it's a part of it, but I actually think we can, as you know, I like to do, zoom out a little bit. And I think we can see a pattern here. I think when you look at players like Maddison, players like Porro, Johnson, Son, if you look at the stats of these players, they produce assists and goals. But we have this tendency, and I think it's been amplified this season because we've had so many injuries and we had such a thin squad, that we demand that players be able to deliver everything for every occasion and every type of game. And that's just not how I view a squad. We know that Porro has that brilliant right foot and can deliver an assist and can be a game winner. We know that Son and Johnson deliver assists and deliver goals. We've seen how Maddison can play when he's fit and able to keep up with the athleticism that's needed in this team. But we also know that all these players are not, they don't suit every game state. And so you need a squad. You want to be able to play Johnson in the game that fits him. You want to be able to put Porro in late like we did today, but play Spence earlier when we need some defensive solidity. You want to be able to play Maddison, come in and be decisive. So that's a squad issue. And so when we've not had a real squad and we've had a lot of injuries, we've been forced to play these players in games where they've been tired, when the game state doesn't suit them. And so you see their weaknesses be amplified. And so to me, it's much more about, okay, we have Johnson for these games where we need someone to arrive at the far post, but maybe we want to start a right winger who's dribbling, is the 1v1 weapon. When it comes to Son, in games when he has to come down deep and receive with a ball with a defender in his back, that doesn't suit him. But again, in the game like today, if you look at both his assists, he starts wide and then he runs in behind, going diagonally towards goal. He arrives, he has the ball by his feet. He's alert enough. Yeah, he's not he's not tired, so he's alert enough to be able to beat his man and deliver across. And so it's
to add to that as well, Simon, because you're absolutely right. Just to add to that, I've said this so many times before on the show, when Son receives the ball when he's moving, that's when he's effective, not a standing start and then beat a man. Sorry to interrupt you, brother, but to add to that, because you're absolutely right. When Sonny receives the ball when he's moving,
look at both
good luck. He's going to fleece anybody.
That's exactly what he does. He comes in behind. Bentancur plays a perfect pass for that second assist. Gray plays the ball in behind on that first one, and he runs and he beats his man. He's in speed and he's able to make a quick decision and deliver a great pass. And so it's the same thing with Johnson. If you force him to have the ball at his feet and standing still, he's not going to be able to beat this man because that's not the type of game that suits him. And so I just think it's about us being in a certain place in this project where we don't have in certain areas the option where, you know, when Udogie has been injured, Spence has been forced to play on the left side, and so we haven't had someone else to come in and play those other games. But instead, Poor has been forced to play every single game. So I think a lot of these issues and how we view players and how we judge them and criticize them comes from us being forced to play profiles in games where it doesn't suit them, basically. And just something to add on Son, because I think Jason and said it perfectly. But when it comes to how we judge players and how we are much quicker and how we talk about players in general, when it comes to Son, first and foremost, you just want, you know, fans to be respectful of the history and the fact that he actually delivers. Yep. We might not like how it looks sometimes, but he's incredibly consistent. I think our XG today was something like 2.79, but we scored 4 goals, and a lot of that has to do with us having players that are clinical. And the other part is, as you said yourself, Ricky, it's about him, and also Jason, it's about him getting rest. And, you know, It's not 25 anymore. It's not 26. He needs to be rested and rotated and used in the right way. And the third part is we have to remember playing like in this type of system is new for Sonny too. He hasn't really found how he can be effective. So he's still trying to figure it out. And we saw today how he is effective. Like when he can make those runs and play with the ball in front of him, being, you know, running downhill, he can be super effective. But he's still trying to figure it out. Sometimes he takes too many touches. He gets caught up in his mind, and, you know, he starts thinking, and he loses confidence, and he, you know, takes the wrong decision. But he needs to kind of be able to have some time to kind of just get used to playing as a winger opposed to playing as forward. Yeah. So that's my big rant.
I think it's a fair point on Sonny. I think that the thing is, as we've said, that it feels like with this system, it does need an incredibly fresh Sonny to be able to flourish in it. And I think when you've got a Sonny that hasn't been at the peak of his powers and hasn't the fitness there, I think that's why we haven't seen the best of Sonny in the system. And like a lot of players, I think, again, Jason's touched on this at the very start of the show, that when players do have a few weeks off and they've had a chance to recover bodies, and that's where you can see him the best in system side. Let you come back in it for a second.
I was just going to say, like, and then that affects his confidence.
Yep.
Right. When he can't do what he wants to do and he misses, and then he starts to, you know, bow his head and
Yep. Well, listen, I think the thing is with Sonny, we know that when he's playing well, we see a happy Sonny.
Odebear's return might well help him as well. You know, it's okay. We haven't seen too much of Odebear at all. Saw a couple of minutes last week. Saw a little bit more today, but obviously he's been out. It will take Odebear a little bit of time to get going, but that opportunity maybe to play Sonny for an hour, take him off, let Odebear come on, or like I say, with those games with Bournemouth, Wolves, and West Ham, where they're between the 2 legs of Europa games, a chance to start him, rest Sonny up, let Sonny come off the bench 70, 80 minutes type of thing, I think will be a massive benefit to Sonny. And it'll be a big benefit to Odebear as well.
Yeah, it will most certainly be. And that's, I think, Ange actually said in his embargo presser, he really thinks that with Odebear, that next season he's going to make a big impact on this league. And I think, again, he references that point. We've not got too many players like Odebear in the squad that, as a winger, that will drive at players with actual genuine pace. We haven't got too many of them. So it's a trait we haven't really seen much of, but we've had the opportunity to see, because, again, he got injured so early in to Spurs' season that we have to hope now we are going to see the best of him in the Spurs shirt, whether it's now, whether it's the start of next season. Andrew was asked after the game, and he must be listening to Jason McGovern, a bit tongue-in-cheek, does that mean Spurs are now safe from their relegation worries? And Andrew said, look, it goes to show you how ridiculous that notion was to start with. People saying we're safe with 12 games to go, and people were actually talking about it. That's the hysteria. And it's all framed around me and putting pressure on me and the football club. I get that. But when you're in the position that we're in, you've got to accept that. It was always about trying. And we knew we had, of course, for the football club, 2 massive domestic games in the FA Cup against Aston Villa and in the League Cup against Liverpool, which didn't go the way that we wanted. But the reality is that, look, We've got to get back to what we know we can be, and we've showed that over the course of the last 3 games. Obviously, we wanted different outcomes in terms of those cup games, but it wasn't through the lack of will or effort. And I think that's the case of it. That was always my primary concern when it came to the players, to protect them, to support them, because I know they gave everything during that previous period of run. Now they've got some help. Now they've got some rest. And like I said, we're not happy still with our league position. We want to improve that. And we've got the opportunity to address that now because we still know our league position isn't acceptable. And just to be clear, that league position for Tottenham is they sit 12 still in the Premier League. They're 6 points off Brentford, who, of course, got that blistering 4-0 win over Leicester on the Friday. Just on that point, Jace, on the table, we had a little bit of a brief discussion off air there. How far on the table? How far up the table can we go, do you think, now between here and the end of the season?
I think it depends on Europe, mate. It's, you know, the fact of the matter is we've won 2 games out of the 8 when we've played on the Thursday before. So, you know, when you look at it, we possibly could have another 7 Europa games. So that's possibly, you could drop a lot of points on the back of those Europa games. Every single Europa game, between each leg, we play a team that will have rested all week. And after every second leg, we play a team that will have rested all week. So the challenges are there. I think we'll end up around about the 50 points mark. And looking at that now, I think we'll end up 9th, 10th, 11th type of thing. That's where we'll be. If we go out to RZ, then I think we could end up 7th. But like I say, I think we all think, you know, whether we finish 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th, 14th, it's a disappointing league season. It's time to focus on that Europa League and say, look, we've got to put ourselves in the best position to do well in those games. And if that means you don't chuck Premier League games at all, but if that means you have to leave a Solanke and a couple of Kulusevskis and that out of a game away to Wolves or away to West Ham, so be it. I'm quite happy to do that. And if that means we drop points, well, we'll just have to take that, as long as you then go on and deliver that Europa League.
But in your mind, Joe, just to be clear, I'm just intrigued to know this. We get to the end of the season, and if we weren't to win the Europa League, but we were to finish Conference League and above, from the club's perspective, they want us to be in any form of Europe, right? I think that's the case for the club. They'll want the club to be in Europe.
Yeah, I think the club will want us to at least make the Conference League. Our best chance of being in a European position is to be knocked out of the Europa League as quickly as possible. Yeah. But, you know, I think the club would sooner take a Champions League position than a Conference League position.
Yeah, I think, you know, my kind of stance when it comes to Ange, I've said, look, I think we come to the end of the season.
Well, you don't care, because for 6 years you only cared about the cups, not the league. Then you were going absolutely at your tiny brain through panic, saying, this is no good, I don't care about the cups, we're 16th in the league, we could go down, I don't care about the cups. So now it's
giving it to you, Ricky.
Down. Don't tell me I've got to get you another flip-flop.
This is 8 years of marriage, this is us two.
You get another flip-flop now because you're going back now for the cups.
We do need a holiday, you boys.
We've got to have something to end the season with. Look, listen, if we win the Europa League, I think, as I mentioned that point that I've said consistently, it's been Spurs' best season for the last. Well, Ange will be the most successful Spurs manager in the last, however many, 16, 17 years if we go and win the Europa League. And I think the reality
and you still want to sack him the next game.
I think, look, listen, if Ange Postecoglou delivers the Europa League, you can't sack him. Whatever people think, no. I just wonder again.
Clip that. Can you clip that? Make sure you clip that, because I don't want to see another flip-flop.
I think that if he goes and wins the Europa League, you can't sack him, but there will be some out there that will worry the fact that when one day Ramos won the League Cup, obviously, you know, we went into that next season where I think it was 2 points from 8 games. I have been exposed by Jason, not for the first time in his last 8 years, I will say. But in your mind, Jay, I think, just intrigued to know this from you. You see enough progression that whatever happens, you think Ange will start that final year of his contract next season for you? Or is it too early to say, in your opinion?
Who, me?
Ange, for you.
I think it's too early to say, Rick. I think if he wins that Europa League, it's going to be incredibly difficult to sack him. But Man United thought that with Ten Hag, and they thought that with Louis van Gaal and winning a trophy. So it's not the be-all and end-all. But I think I think it depends. If you criticise him because he doesn't win big games, and you criticise him because he doesn't do this, and he criticise him because he doesn't do that, and then he goes and proves everyone wrong and wins, and we stop the mockery of the "I
And
always win in my
criticize him
second
for
season."
saying, and
How the hell are you
criticize him
going to
for
sack him?
saying he was going to win a trophy.
Yeah, I mean, it's on that point. I mean, Si, are you in the same broad-minded Jason there? I mean, I know, look, you've been a firm Ange defender, I think it's fair to say, on X. I mean, where are you? Do you think, look, for me, cards on the table, I've said, look, I think we come to the end of the season, we assess what's happened, and then we go from there. But I will make that point as Jason's laughing now. There's no way you can sack. You can't sack Ange Postecoglou after he goes and wins the Europa League. You just can't.
We all know it's one thing what I want, and it's one thing what we fans want, and it's something what the club will do. And
absolutely,
we have to kind of separate the two when we talk about it. So, I mean, to me, okay. So my main thing here is that I like the project. I like the approach to trying to go from trying to win now, which was a strategy that we were never going to be able to kind of fulfill by, investing in, aging players that are at the peak of their form. Like that was never really realistic. And also changing coaches the moment they didn't win or didn't perform the way we did with Conte and Jose. So that's the way we were doing stuff. But I like what we've done now, which is to build young, to try to be more patient, not to sack the manager after 18 months, but actually stick with the manager through the rough part. And the only way we get the fruits of that labor is by sticking with the coach, like with sticking with the approach. Now, do I think Ange is perfect? Do I have questions around Ange when it comes to certain things? Yes. Do I think they are relevant right now? No. Right now, what's relevant is that we keep building. And then later down the road, we're going to see if is he the coach that can take us to, the absolute top? Who knows? But he is the coach that can actually manage this very odd club with with this traumatic history, with a fan base that are all over the place, anxious and traumatized. Yeah. But and keep everyone together. Like as a leader and as someone to kind of build a foundation, I 100% believe in him. And then when we're in year 3 or year 4, maybe we need to switch it up. Maybe that's as far as he can take us. But switching it out now or giving up a couple of months ago when I was one of the few who said we shouldn't and we won't.
Yeah.
We have done that. That would have been the club admitting that the approach they took from the start was for nothing. So now them sticking with it. This is why I think they will stick with it, because they've already committed. If they were to fire him, they should have done it, a couple of months ago. So that's what I think they will do. I think that will be the right decision. Do I think will be what everyone thinks if we don't win the European League? No. I think a lot of people will say now is the right time to change. But I do feel like a lot of these players are committed to this system, to this coach, to the vibes, to the feeling, to everything he speaks of. And I do think he will get, a chance next season to kind of fulfill a lot of the work that has been started these 2 seasons.
To AK there on the show says, and Ricky watches this show. Call you out if we win the Europa League. I know Ange bloody watches the show. I'll tell you, he does watch the show, so we'll have to.
I mean, I can always say that I used to be a fan of this show, like when I was a nobody in this space, and I've heard Ricky say this, so I'm just happy that he has someone that speaks truth to power here in Jason.
Listen, I think that I would class myself bringing TJ into this debate. I would class myself as quite a moderate fan. I'm not one to lose my mind or lose my head over a course of just a game or two. I think what my questions have been that when I look. Jason will disagree as his face is there. I'll let you come back, Jason, for a second. But to bring TJ in, I think the reality is that, when you're judging that over the metric of the last 18 months, I've said that I've had my concerns over whether I've seen enough in the 18 months for me to feel I could warrant seeing this for another season. And I think the reality is, as I've said, just to be very, very clear, if he goes and delivers the Europa League, whatever you think about Ange Postecoglou, you can't sack him. You can't sack Ange Postecoglou if he wins the Europa League. Even if Tottenham drop down to 15th, 16th, where Jason's giving me an ear cut there in the background. I mean, TJ, I know you've seen this debate a lot on last word on Spurs through the comments. I've got to say, look, I don't think in the last 8-9 years we've done the show, and Jason's with me with the audio days. Now having the comments, and we used to have a radio show as well, it does, like I say, give a real different dimension to the show when you're having live comments coming in. And I would just say again, there's such a differentiation between people that might want him, people that don't want him. I don't think I've ever seen this with a Spurs manager. I mean, TJ, I'll get your take on it for you, where you are with him, and we'll get Jason to close it on this. Where are you in your mind, TJ? I mean, you see enough for you to at least say, we analyse things at the end of the season, or do you see enough already to say, look, he's going to be that man that takes into next season regardless? What happens?
Couple of different questions there, but I mean, listen. All along, I've never once said that Ange should go. Never. The only thing that I ever said was after the during the Leicester game, I said if he loses this, his position becomes untenable, and I started that by saying I have never said that he should be replaced by somebody else. Bringing in somebody else only hurts us more than it helps us. And I said, but if he loses this, his position becomes untenable and they will get rid of him. And then I ended it by saying, whether you are Ange in or Ange out. And I've always been Ange in, just because, not because I'm the biggest fan of him, or I think he's the greatest manager that ever lived. I have to say, I do like him personally, to Simon's point that he made a little while back. I like his personality. I like his charm. I like his charisma. I like his humor. And also, I'll make that point in a second. But so I do like him personally. I think he's a nice man. Do I think he's the greatest football manager ever? Who knows? Because again, I know it's boring to keep saying, but if you take 13, 14 senior players away from any manager, how can we really judge their performance? You know, you could do any analogy you want. Oh, you get a car and you remove 14 bits, it's not going to go down the track as fast. We don't need those kind of analogies, right? So I think, to be honest, whether he wins the Europa or whether he doesn't, let's give him a chance with this squad. You know, and so now I'm going to make the point. Lucas Bergvall, oh my God, like today he was unbelievable. The last kind of 4 or 5 games I've seen him play in, he was absolutely magical. He was electric. He was tenacious. He was aggressive. He was technical and skillful. He's so good. And he just turned 19 a couple of weeks ago. So I am going to go out on a record here and say Ange Postecoglou created this version of Lucas Bergvall that we have right now. Would he have got so many minutes if we didn't have the injuries? No, he probably wouldn't. But there are other kids that Ange could have played in that position, and he didn't. He stuck with Lucas Bergvall, who was incredible. We've already talked about Jed Spence coming up under Ange Postecoglou. I mean, can we say that Ange Postecoglou has turned Vicario into an absolutely irreplaceable number one? His shot-stopping ability was great, but he's so much more solid now.
A leader, isn't he?
He's a leader. Like, again, to Ange's point, when he makes a mistake, everyone thinks he does it on purpose. When he does something great, everyone thinks it's an accident. So I am gonna assign plaudits to this man. And if he wins the Europa, he stays. Even if he doesn't win the Europa, let's see what he can do with a fully fit squad.
Yeah. Jace, we've overseen both of us together since doing this show the last 8-9 years. We have seen 8 managers. The listeners and audio won't forget you did quit on me under one of them. I've not quit yet, and I've done 40 games this season with Ange Postecoglou. Let me just remind you of that. And of course, the fact that when we come to the end of it, I just feel, is there anything you want to add on this debate, Jace? I thought you wanted to come back in there. Again, as we said, we'll analyse things at the end of the season. We'll let you unmute from your end. Because I know, the reason why I say this, I know many fans are kind of now pinning their hopes on the Europa League. But the reality is that if you do see an up and turn in the Premier League, which we didn't see second half of last season, if you remember, it wasn't a great second half of last season. We now had 3 wins in a row. We've not done that since December 2023, going back all that way. I just wonder in your mind, you know, he'll be given that time, I presume, to see if he can get the best out of a very, very young squad. That, as I've said numerous occasions, whatever you think about my opinion on Ange, I've said this about so many managers under ENIC and in Daniel Levy's tenure at the club. They've never really got the tools they've needed to do the job. That's why I've always been, to some degree, very sympathetic of Ange. You know, whatever you think about him tactically, whatever you think about the way he manages the team at certain occasions, I think what you can't get away from is that he has been badly let down in the market, where he's had so many young players thrust upon him, where there's no doubt, he said it himself, there's been a need to have some experienced heads around that too, Jace.
Yeah. You know, we can always talk about transfer windows and as managers been backed and haven't they? I mean, we've earlier we're talking about a player that should be in the England team. Don't forget that was a club signing. Manager didn't want him, and now we're talking about that player going into the England side. So sometimes you don't always get everything you want. I don't think any manager gets everything they want, but I think with Ange, I think with Postecoglou, a lot of the criticisms of him, I think, has been valid up until these 10 weeks. I think what's happened in these 10 weeks, I honestly think you have to look at these last 10 weeks as a little bit separate, because to go with that, sometimes 10, I think there was one game we were missing 14 players.
Yeah, 14 senior players. That was the most.
14
Yeah.
senior players. And people saying, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And just in amongst that, as I say, it's not just the match days. You're missing them in training. You're making substitutions based on minutes, not on the game scenario. Playing every 3 days with knackered players. Confidence starts to go. I think, the last 10 weeks for me is totally different to the criticisms of him before. But, when you reach the end of the season, if your big criticism of him is, we'll never win anything playing this way, and we do win something playing that way, then where do you stand with your criticism then? If your criticism is he's not improving players, and we've seen Grays and Bergvale's come on, and then a Spence come back, and we've seen a better version of this player and that player, then where's your criticism going? If your criticism of him is, we got this muscle wrecker who ruins people in training, I'd sooner have Iraola, who's got 7 players out with a muscle injury, then don't go down that route. So just be really careful at the end of the season when you judge him, that whatever flag you put against him actually stands up to criticism. Rather than just thinking he's an Aussie via Japan and Scotland, therefore he's an idiot. And you know what? If he was Spanish or Italian, I'd have more time for him. Because I do think a lot of the criticism of him is based on the snobbery value
100%.
of where he's from, and that he's
100%.
clearly out of his depth, because Scotland, Ipswich isn't Kilmarnock.
100%.
And it's such a lazy criticism of him. I get that Scottish football isn't respected by us, but we've just seen a Scotland with Celtic go there and put Bayern Munich under the cosh. We've seen Rangers finish in the top 8 as well, haven't they? Or did they finish 9th in the end? Rangers. But, I can't quite remember. But, yes,
the
he's
fact
in
that
a
he's
dominant
Australian
side.
is a huge part of it, Jay.
But, just this thing
huge
of he's
part,
Australian, therefore he's completely out of his depth, and he's managed in Asia where Heung-min Song and Mitoma and players like that have come from. And don't forget, they were only shirt sellers when we signed them, but because they're from Asia. And I think that's a lot of the criticism that he gets.
It's interesting.
That's really well said, mate. Really well said.
I can see Si was coming on this. Go on, Si.
I was just going to say, quickly, it's also, I think, a lot of the issues I've seen from fans and how they view this season is that I think that a lot of fans they had their expectations a little bit too high. So when we started this project, we cleaned house. We started over from scratch. And so in the first year of a coach like this, when a coach like this comes in, the first thing we look at is, are we getting in the players he needs? Are we seeing a system and a playing style that we like?
Yep.
And can we believe in this project? And so he kind of cleared that bar. We finished 5th. We saw a lot of fans singing, we got our Tottenham back.
And they lost Harry Kane. We can't forget they lost Harry Kane after as well.
And we saw something that we saw younger players coming in. We saw him use Sarr and the doggy. We saw Bissouma playing great. We saw Madison come in. And we started to see this formation of a new team. And so we come into this next season with European football and some new players, young players coming in, and we're really excited. And I think a lot of fans expected us to take a jump up. Well, my expectations was, okay, we're still in a new project. We now have 5-6 new players coming in, and we're going to play a lot more games. We're going to go from 40 games to 60 games. So that means that we're probably going to stay static.
Yep.
And then we got injuries, and it got worse. And so I think that expectation, I think it's reasonable to raise your expectations of a coach, but I think it's also reasonable to be reasonable with your expectation, which means that I expected us to struggle this season because, playing a lot more games, with a really young team with a fundamentally pretty new system that's still getting incorporated was not going to be, clear cut. We're not just, that's not how a process works. It doesn't just go straight up. It's going to go up and down and, be a little bit wavy before you see that jump up. And so going into the next
do
season,
me a favor. Can you wake me up? Can you wake me up when it jumps up? Can you wake me up when it goes like that?
No, but I was just going to come to that point, which is next season, I think it's reasonable if he stays to be much more critical, to be demanding of him actually, showing up and producing in multiple competitions because we've given him the time. So I think it's how fans react to what's been happening depends a lot of how, if they really thought about what they expected going into the season, or if they just automatically assume that it would be a jump up. And I think you could see that in maybe, and I know a lot of people don't like to use this example, but looking at Arsenal in that second season when they still struggled, it was because they started getting European play. They finished 7th, and it wasn't until the 3rd and 4th year they started to go up. And I think that's also when you start, getting those young players that you brought in on their second contract. And when you start to kind of getting players that maybe are a little bit more experienced that come in just to kind of give you that finishing touch that will elevate you. And so I think, to me, that this first and second year has been kind of the same thing. It's still about developing the project, getting the players in, getting the fundamentals, straightened out. And then we can kind of, those questions I have about Ange that I mentioned before, they become more relevant. Is he adapt enough to rotate a big squad in the right way? Does he react to game state? Can he get these players to play patterns that actually result in goal? Can he recruit, those players that will get us to the next stage? And all that we don't know, but I think it's also fair to say that it's not. He hasn't had the platform to kind of execute those things yet.
No, I mean, just to go to close this debate as a whole, I think the reason why, again, there's been many question marks out there is that, Sai referring to there about there being, the squad. I think the issue is that I just feel for a lot of fans out there, feel Ange may never get that squad that he needs. I think that, again, is why there is those doubts out there that, look, the guy, whatever you say about him, he can't be tactically clueless because he's gone and won wherever he's been in the respective leagues and gone and won some big games in for Tottenham. So there's no doubt that he's not gone. Sorry, come back on that.
But Ricky, just to that point, like when people say that he's never going to get the squad that he needs, well, listen, what you're saying now is that he came in with a brief that he was going to change the club, right? So if we want change, this is his words, the club needs to change. We need to actually change how we do things. And sticking with a coach is one thing. Getting another type of player is another thing. But if we say that our club can't deliver for a coach what he needs, then we're saying our club can never change, so he needs to change. Which is basically us arguing for the club do what they've always done, to not change. So I think what we need to do is to demand that a coach gets what he needs, because that's the only way we are going to change as a club.
It's very
true.
So
they recruited him,
knowing close. And also, this it's also a sort of nebulous theory. What is the squad that the coach wants? And also, if he says, "Oh, I want that player," does that player then come in and transform the club? So for me, I like to look at what we currently have, and again, to speak to the Bergvalls and the Greys, and Mikey Moore looked very promising, and Odebear looking very promising. So the structure for our long-term future is actually looking really, really encouraging. So I think we all know we need a really combative, world-class number 6. And then back up for Solanke. God bless Richie. I can't give you any more chances, bro. I can't. Good luck to you, brother. Go to Saudi. Good luck to you. So we need backup there. People talking about Delap as well. Oh, maybe we could bring in Delap backup for Solanke. I don't think he'd ever come as being backup. To be honest, I already think I know where he's going to go it's a difficult one to say, but I think I know where he's going to go. Smart money. Jason had a little cheeky fiver. I won't say what that cheeky fiver was placed on. I'll leave that to Jason. But, you know, if I was going to have a little punt on where I think Rory Delap's playing next season, it's in North London, but it's not in a white shirt.
Okay.
I don't think he's a backup striker to anybody. I think he's a very promising player. He reminds me a lot of Jamie Vardy, who's a player that I've never had any affection for, ever, even when he was playing in an England shirt.
Yeah.
But he knows where the back of the goal is, and he's a nasty, aggressive. He's a real handful. So I think I know where he's going. But as far as Ange, just to kind of close that debate, let's see him play. And then also to add, boys, we sort of skated around this, but he's come in and given us the brand of football that we wanted. We didn't like it under Conte. We didn't like it under Mu. We didn't like it under Nuno, right? We want to play Tottenham football. And he's given us that. That's 180 degrees from where we've been playing for the last 5 or 6 years before he came in. So let's give the man a little bit of time and some admiration and respect. And I'm sure, Rick, you want to move on.
I definitely want to move on from Ange Postecoglou, no disrespect. I mean, in terms of this segment, not in terms of him generally. So what Jason might
for
think.
Sure. Otherwise, we'll be here all day.
Yeah, we are going to move on. We're going to move on. Look, we're going to go for our final break of the show for our listeners all day. We have got over 7,000-8,000 of you that are watching the show live. As always, thank you so much for all your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. As always, we are delighted to be sponsored by NordVPN. Nord, of course, have been our leading sponsors over the course of the last 4 or 5 years here on Last Word on Spurs. They're great for those that are going to have those away days coming up. Of course, AZ round the corner. You're going to want to watch still your favourite sport, all your favourite programmes out there. You can change your location settings to make that happen. Of course, they also offer you even increased security, encryption around all of your data. Please go and check them out. nordvpn.com/LWOS. Right. Just to bring in what Anne just said pre and after the game very, very quickly. He was asked about the performance. He said, look, I thought 3 flights of stairs later, I'm out of condition. It was a really good performance. We had to work hard. Ipswich are one of the most hardest working teams in the league. At home, they fight for every point. I thought they really started well in the opening 10, 15 minutes, but we really, really kept going in terms of our resilience, kept going in terms of our aggression, and of course, we got the points. But I always felt we were a threat when we moved forward with the ball, and we had to have things in terms of fruits of our labours with that final third in the way we played super exciting clinical football. And reference the fact of players coming back. You can see we've certainly benefited from that. There's no coincidence that our results have picked up since having players back. You saw we were able to rest a couple like Pedro and Madders. I can make substitutions that you can see have a real difference on the game. We're certainly in a good space using these 2 weeks as well, where we can re-energise the team, and we had still had significant players out. A reminder, we have still got out the likes of Solanke, Richarlison, Romero, Van der Ven, Ben Davies, who I just want to be clear, from Ange said, he's just managing his minutes. We've got to try and navigate these next 10 days or 2 weeks ahead of the international break. We want everybody to get minutes. We didn't want Brennan and Desi to play more than 60. And all these kind of things that I'm making at the moment are trying to get us into a position where we have as many healthy players as possible. He touched on Kevin Danso, who he admitted he loves a whack during games. I mean, Kevin Danso, I think, has been one of a real consistent number of players over the course of the last 2-3 games. And Ange was making that point. It's still a really young team, but I think Kevin has been a super, super addition for us. He was talking about the battle that Liam Delap had with Archie Gray. And he said, look, Delap's a real handful for anybody, as TJ's touched upon. But the great thing with Archie is he just keeps on going. We'll get enormous growth out of Archie during this period. He's contributing right now. I know that everybody wants to see him in that number 6 role. But like I said, I thought he had to do some really good defensive work against, like I said, a real top striker. I thought we handled it ever so well. We just felt if Archie was more comfortable on the right, which is why we had him swapping sides with Gray and Danso throughout the game. But look, if you say so, mate, for me, I thought Archie as a whole handled himself really, really well. And Ange wanted to make that point. He was asked whether the mood has changed. And he said, look, it never was a mood. It's a different feeling because the lads have got energy. They're recovering from games. They've got the opportunity to train. They see they've got the support and help now in terms of other players. Training has been really, really good over the last couple of weeks. The first training sessions we've had for 2.5 months, you really saw how players like Kulusevski was able to perform. And the poor guys that have had to play consistently have had 2.5 months being grounded right into the ground. And look, I think for all players out there, it's not so much about the mood, it's about the mental state. having players having the opportunity to perform at the levels we want to, and without the changes we've had to face over the last 2 months, I'm sure we could and would have achieved more overall. So big words there from Ange. It goes back to what Jason has said so often about players in training. Jason, come back on that point before we do look to move on.
Yeah, just quickly on TJ's one. He's right. We do need a really top class number 6, but we may well already have one. We just haven't seen him play there. And everything Ange talks about Archie Gray is kind of the teacher's pet, isn't he? He's just you sense that he really enjoys working with him. I think he's got great belief in Archie Gray's talents, and it will be interesting to see. I hope we do get to see Archie Gray play a few games in that number 6 role between now and the end of the season. I'm sure once Mickey, Romero, whoever comes back and we can get him out of that back 4 into midfield, we'll see it. But interesting today, just in that team selection, Bissouma and Sarr missed out, whereas Bergvall still kept his place. So I think it will be great if we do get to see Archie in there, just really see what type of number 6 we have got.
Yeah, on that team lineup Jay spoke about there, Ange named 3 changes for Spurs' side to take on Ipswich. The Australian had got back 5 players from injury after last Sunday's 1-0 win against Manchester United. In that squad, Vicario, Maddison, Udogie, Brennan Johnson and also Odegaard. And of course, we have to bear in mind Spurs have got Man City on Wednesday night. So Ange made a hat-trick of changes. Pedro Porro got a rest with Jed Spence switching to right back. Udogie coming in at left back for almost his first start. You have to go back only almost 2 months for that. Gray came in alongside Kevin Danso for Ben Davies, who missed out, while Johnson's first start after a month out replaced Maddison, with Dejan Kulusevski moving back into a deeper role. Jed Spence started at right back for the first time since Boxing Day. So that Tottenham team read Vicario, Spence, Danso, Gray, Udogie, Bergvall, Bentancur, Kulusevski, Johnson, Tell, Son, the subs of Kinski, Porro, Reguilon, Bissouma, Sarr, Maddison, Moore, Odegaard, Scarlett, and said on the changes, we've got to be smart about it. And the reality is that we need to get some legs into the minutes into the legs of Destiny and Brennan and others. So I think these 2 games give us a great opportunity to do that. And we want to obviously win the remaining games before the international break. Now, if we had more time, we would go into every one of the elements of that game. But I've got to briefly just say, for anybody that caught the opening minute and a half to that game, you probably thought, what have you walked into? And in that first, actually, I lied to you. It wasn't even a minute. It was, even for Spurs, this is dramatic. I know you think I'm dramatic. This was 20 seconds into the game where, quite frankly, Kujaste ran through Spurs' midfield. He set away Delap, who was denied by Vicario. Philogene follow-up shot hit a combination of Hutchinson and Vicario on the line, which subsequently was given offside. Sloppy from Tottenham. But if I'm going to say, if anyone needs an introduction to life of being a Spurs fan, I would love to know, listeners of Last Word of Spurs viewers out there, we know that we get 50, 60,000 listeners to this show weekly, viewers. If that was your first Spurs game, please get in touch with us with our email address. I would love you to tell us what your experience was as a Spurs fan for your opening 20 seconds of a game, because that was simply remarkable. We have to move on. I'd love to give that more time and go around the panel. It was absolutely nuts, wasn't it? The first 20 seconds of Spurs in a Premier League game. There's your life. Enjoy it. 6 minutes in, Calvin Phillips produces a fine delivery and Delap flicks on to the woodwork, a header, before Philogene smashes it over with an overhead kick. It could have easily been 2-0 to Ipswich in the opening 6 minutes, and it just felt Spurs needed to take, an element of getting into the game calmly. Bergvall followed up with a shot that was blocked, and then we did go ahead. It was a lovely move from Tottenham, and it was a combination, as we said, of Sonny driving at the defence, driving down the wing. Lovely move. And it all starts, I've got to say, from this brilliant ball from Archie Gray. It was an absolutely sensational ball to release Son down the left with I think many would say it's a thing of beauty, really. Trademark Johnson goal, poking in from close range.
Shades of Toby, that pass, Rick, right? Shades of Toby.
Teach, come in on this goal for us to put Spurs 1 up. A lovely move.
Just hold that graphic, Rick. First. Look at the easy balls Archie Gray has on as well.
Well said,
Jason.
Jason.
Go left of him, he can go right to him.
Yeah.
But he looks to play the penetrative pass.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. Look at the ball onto Jed Spence.
Yep.
Look at it.
It's straight.
Easy pass.
And Jed is calling for it. Jed is calling for it. For listeners and audio.
On the left of him, Who's that? That's Bergvall on the left, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
or on the left on the screen type of thing.
On the
so
left.
look, there's two really easy balls for him to play there, but he
Yep.
chooses a penetration ball, which is superb for him. He spots the pass. You know, lots of people with that, if they're not looking, if they're not scanning, they play that easy ball, but he takes the risky pass because he can see it.
I also think that Son would have had a hand in that, Jace. We can't see it from the screen, but he would have made that run and called for it. And you know, while Ricky was giving the explanation there of that glorious goal, and it really was a thing of beauty. You often see, you know, why they refer to this game as the beautiful game. Sonny would have been on the end of those passes from Toby Alderweireld many times. You know, Toby was he was the king of the pings, right? He just had this beautiful cross diagonal 60-70 yard pass. And with Sonny in full flight, you can't defend against that. And also Sonny's so good at staying onside. You know, he's not a player that's often flagged offside. And so it was a wonderful thing to see. I'm glad. And also, Jace, to your point, not only did he ignore those kind of easy 10-yard passes, you know, long balls are just almost frowned upon in the modern game. And yet there it was, utilized with maximum efficiency and potency. And Sonny was loving it. It did feel like vintage Sonny, 2016, 2017, whenever it was, you know, all those years. It was a really lovely way to start things off. And then, you know, there's Johnson arriving at the right time, staying on side, finding space and slotting it home. Not easy to do. And he just makes it look terribly, terribly simple.
He did. So Johnson put Spurs 1-0 up. A lovely goal, trademark goal for Johnson. It looks like Ange, that performance was signalling to Vicario to get the ball long to try and cause Ipswich some issues. Down the other end, James Maddison was getting a warm welcome from the Ipswich faithful. And in between that, I've got to say, Kevin Danso was a lovely little audacious turn from Kevin Danso, a pirouette away from one of the defenders as Spurs were one up. And Danso, I could see he's now getting a super Kev chant from the Spurs fans out there. A lot of love for Kevin Danso. And Ipswich, I think at this point, were really struggling to keep up with Sonny and the work that he was delivering for Tottenham. And Spurs did get a second goal. We're going to come over to Sai for the nature of that goal as Johnson doubled his for the afternoon. Again, it was all the work really done by Heung-min Son for Tottenham, as Danso, was a key indicator in the way this did come about. We had Johnson left in loads of space as Sonny rolled the ball across the box. Good pick out from Benton Core this time. Like I say, Johnson doubling Tottenham's lead. A lovely work goal side to double us and give us some confidence going in 2-0 up against Ipswich away from home. We weren't 2-0 up a lot this season away from home. Brighton, we won't go for Brighton, but you know I'm going with that. We won't go there. We're not going there.
Brilliant pass by Bentancur as well to play it through there. And Sonny just recognized the space and ran behind. I got a little bit worried that, you know, Son does have this habit sometimes. He overthinks and he starts taking too many touches. But so I was really, I got nervous. He wasn't, going to be able to find an open man. But he did brilliantly. And I love that finish, just calmly, basically passing the ball into the net. When I saw the lineup, I was a little bit worried. I didn't love Bentancur and Bergvall together in that United game. Both individually great players, but they're both very typical eights. So they love to press. They love to kind of trying to get up and to win the ball back. And sometimes that open space, for example, that first chance Ipswich had, that's both Bentancur and Bergvall, getting attracted to the ball, going up and pressing. But in those moments when we're on the ball, to have them both with their vision and their playmaking ability is brilliant. And I thought that pass was brilliant to see. And we miss that sometimes. I mean, Romero is the guy that's usually the one that plays in between the lines. And sometimes when he doesn't play, we get, into this habit of playing out wide all the time. And we can't find those patterns that kind of break down the opposition. But brilliant pass by Bentancur and brilliant finish by Johnson.
It was. Like I say, Spurs 2 to the good and flying really at Ipswich. Ipswich did grab a goal back. And it was really probably something against the run of play slightly where Danso lost the ball outside of Tottenham's penalty area. That will tell me off for giving any praise to any Tottenham player. They'll quickly take that away from you as a super kid was being belted out around the stadium. Phillips slid in Clark, who cut it back for Hutchinson. I think Omari Hutchinson, a really good player. I want to keep an eye on for Ipswich. Curled into the corner. Spurs really slow to get rid of the ball. Switched off and got punished. 2-1. And yeah, I mean, to be fair to Ipswich, the crowd, I think, maybe sensed there was a real good opportunity to maybe rattle Spurs before half time. And look, to be fair, when we analyse that first half, Ipswich started off really intensely in terms of the way they started. The lap was on fire. Could have really delapped himself, had a hat-trick in the opening 15 minutes. There was 2 moments of brilliance from Heung-min Son, who set up, of course, Johnson for the 2 quick-fire goals. But like I say, just when it appeared Spurs were in control, Ipswich got one back. But I think the telling thing about this game was that Spurs looked dangerous when they got the ball forward quickly. And there was a feeling that whenever Spurs did go forward, they looked like they might score. Second half-wise, Ipswich had a change at half-time. Ben Godfrey was hooked for Luke Wolfenden. Kieran McKenna forced into that early change in the second half period. The classy Jens Klaus limped off and Jack Taylor came on to Ipswich, forcing to a couple of changes. And Spurs in that early part of the second half escaped with an offside call. Look, you can judge these things in different ways. You could say credit to Tottenham because they actually deployed their line a lot higher. That obviously caught the player offside, but there was some nervy moments in there when Ipswich did bring it back to 2-2. But again, the offside flag did go up. I have to ask very quickly on this, a very quick round the table. Jason, I don't know if you saw it with Kevin Danso, where there looked like a blatant shoulder barge on him in the middle of the second half, where I think some out there, they, if that was anywhere else on the pitch, you would argue how Kevin Danso has not got Spurs a penalty. And, you know, the crazy thing is the defender wasn't even looking at the ball. A quick round the table, Jace, pen or not, or do you just not get those kind of pens in the penalty area, Jace? I'll get you to unmute. Yes or no for you?
I think that's it, mate. You just don't get them in a penalty area. You just don't get them. So, you know.
Let's go around very quickly.
We scored 4.
We did score 4. TJ, yes or no penalty for you? Should it have been a pen? Yes or no?
100% a foul. It's in the penalty area. So, yes, that should be a penalty. Should have been a penalty. 100% clear foul.
Yep. So, very quickly, yes or no for you? Pen or no pen?
To me, it's a penalty. I thought the ref was awful in that second half, the whole game basically. But
he had a terrible game. Agreed. He had a terrible game. He was never in control.
Away from us because he didn't. You know, he set a bar that allowed that for not to be a penalty. But it was a penalty.
Listen, penalty across the table. We are going to move on. We did. It's weird, is it? We've scored 4 and we're saying the referee's had an awful game. Football, we wouldn't change it. What a nuts business. Scored 4 goals, won a game away, 3 wins in the bout in December of 2023. Referee's had a shocker. Right, we're going to move on. Look, Jason referred to the point about Matthias Tell, where there's some out there that have already been raising their concerns about him. I mean, look, he's had how many minutes has Matthias Tell played? 180, 240 so far? I mean, we're going to judge him more than 5 games, aren't we? I know Jason calls me a flip-flop, but even I'm willing to give him a few more games than 240 minutes to prove his difference.
You know, it's not just the lack of football. How many games has he really started?
No, they started every time.
And people shouldn't even look at that as against him because he's been up against Kane.
New team, new system. We've got to give him some time.
They said the same thing about Sri Lanka, by the way.
New league. Just
so true.
Give the boy time.
Yeah. Yes, honestly, Si, you're spot on there. We did say the same thing about Solanke when he played 2 or 3 games.
And Kulusevski. And Kulusevski.
Just the whole squad. Look, of course, the big clamour, as we spoke about earlier in the show, was the fact there's been this real clamour around Jed Spence for England. Jed Spence bringing Tottenham's 3rd goal of the game. A beautiful finish from Jed. It did take a deflection. And, you know, for him, like I say, for Jed, it's a really, really good finish in a way in which he'll be demonstrating to many, many out there, Thomas Tuchel and more, he's deserving of that England call-up. So it is one to keep an eye on, but a great finish from Jed, who celebrated amongst the Spurs fans at the away end. Some lovely, lovely scenes for those away fans that Jed celebrated in front of. Like I say, really, really good, I've got to say. I know,
nice to see him celebrate with his family at the end.
Yes,
I think it's his sister does some brilliant match day vlogs.
I know his sister is a big TikToker. So sending love to the sister. And Si, you said very quickly you've got you put an ex post out there about Spence quickly bringing it into play for a sign. I wanted to mention
an ex post from just Spence having a cheeky tweet where he said, "I'm coming from everything," and a little and a small lion right there in the post.
He's
making it very clear what his thoughts on it.
Absolutely. He's playing like a lion at the moment. I will just say out there, Spurs 3-1 up. I think it's important I highlight this. Still massive, massive chance from Spurs fans that we want ENIC out. I think it goes to show you that now we're at a point where even if Tottenham are winning a game quite comprehensively and comfortably, those away fans are making their feelings known about the ownership, the fact they are still calling for, like I say, the removal of Daniel Levy or the board. Again, we've gone obviously through the subject recently. There'll be more, of course, on that with change for Tottenham, who are bringing another Spaces out next week. We'll bring you on that. But look, Dejan Kulusevski wrapped up the scoring for Tottenham. I mean, I know for many out there, Kulusevski has been Spurs' main man of the season. A beautiful individual goal that our screenshot doesn't give you the justice of. Carried the ball, cut inside, curled home for his 10th goal of the season. Ipswich were unhappy as Jacob Greaves was down with what seemed a head injury. Spurs did play on, and Dejan Kulusevski got Tottenham's 4th. Like I say, a lovely, lovely goal and a great header from Dane Scarlett. Can't forget that. Dane Scarlett with a lovely little header into the path of Dejan Kulusevski that started that run. So I've got to say again, a nice comprehensive win, Tej, that I think for many out there, look, Spurs 3 wins on the bounce. Again, I'll make that point I've said throughout the show. December 2023, the last time that's happened. And all eyes will be turned to City on Wednesday to see if we can make it 4 on the spin.
Yeah, and listen, we've been saying for years, if only we could play Manchester City, not just every week in the Premier League, but in the Champions League. For whatever reason, they never seem to be able to lay a glove on us, do they? But yeah, man, I mean, listen, just delighted for them all as well. And also, I want to shout out the traveling fans as well, man, watching over here in the States and just hearing the fans just chanting and singing all the way through. And I love it, man. Obviously it's so cold a lot of the time back home. So whenever I stick on the TV over here and I saw a couple of Tottenham fans like wearing, classic kind of Holston shirts, no jackets. It was obviously quite a nice day back home. And I'm really happy for them, man, to travel up to Ipswich and have such a comprehensive win. And, you supported the boys with great gusto throughout. So big up to the travelling fans. And yes, mate, to the team and to Dane Scarlett for coming on for a few minutes and winning vital headers and putting himself about. And also, to Jason's point, if Tell, after 2 games or 3 games or whatever, is being completely written off. Oh, he's a waste of time. Then, let Dane Scarlett come in and put a bit of pressure on him. We've already talked about what a difference it makes. I thought Udogie had a really good game today. There's no way that him looking at Spence every week saying this guy's the best player in the country right now. This is exactly the right kind of pressure that they all want to be feeling. Remember, these are young men and unfortunately, because of the nature of all sports, but certainly this sport, they're not going to have a very long career. And so it's really important for them to feel that they're being G'd on and also, that they're being spurred, no pun intended, to really fight for their position. And so all of these players coming back and performing, even if you're coming off the bench for 5 minutes, come on and put a shift in. And this is what we want to see from our players. Rick, you and I have said a million times on this program, we're never going to judge a player if you lose the game. It's the manner of that loss. Of course. And so aptitude and attitude is something that we want from all of the boys. And I think they showed that today. So they should all be proud.
Tej, you're a superstar. We're going to see Tej hopefully Wednesday for Man City. Again, as we said, I mean, in recent games, it hasn't been the most pleasing a scoreline against City, but we know that Spurs are at home. They'll have the home support. It'll be a little bit different to the last time we played Man City at home, where I know for many out there, and Ange himself found that a really difficult game to deal with and how to manage it, to be honest.
We've played City since then at home.
Have we played them at home since then?
Even in the Cup.
In the Cup, yeah.
Oh, in the Cup.
Oh, no, they don't matter because he don't care about the Cups anymore, does he?
right off my head. It was right off my head, Jess. I forgot.
The Cups anymore.
Listen, Tej, we're going to see you Wednesday. We love you very much. Thank you so much. Our next James Bond. Keep pushing that on social media. Who knows the beauty of social media, where that takes us? You never know these days. You never know. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful Simon Yemane, Si. Thank you for keeping us level-headed, where many around us, I'm not sure who those people are losing theirs. Who are those people that are losing their heads? I'm not too sure who those people are. Si, where can the thousands and the millions find you if they want to keep level and same with you?
You can just, search my name, Simon Yemane, on X or Twitter. You can do that, or alternatively, you can write Delusional Ange Fan, and you probably see my face show up there, top of the bar. Thank you so much for having me. I have to say, what great guests, Jason and TJ. Amazingly smart and beautiful men, and I'm honored to be in the same space as them on this podcast. So thank you
Right
so
back
much.
at you, Simon. Right
I
back
feel
at
like,
you.
I feel like that kind of Homer Simpson now. That kind of goes back into the trees. As a,
Ricky,
You
you know I
blend
love
into
you.
the bush.
And
like
thank you,
Jason.
Ricky. The kindest,
pleasure.
smartest Spurs fan I've ever met.
There'll be a debate on the smartest, most certainly the most intellectual, but I'll try and bring the dramatism, the charisma that this show maybe needs. So I'll happily keep that afloat for you. Jace, I would disagree, as we've disagreed for the last 8 years, but I love him very much. Jace, you've had your win. It's 3 in a row. And again, I know you love that stat, so I'll read it again. Tottenham and Arsenal. Spurs win and Arsenal lose on the same day for the first time since October. We'll take some more of them, and obviously a case that if we're winning, we're all happy, right, Jace?
Well, we should be.
Yes.
Happy. Enjoy the wins because it has been a tough season, so enjoy them. But obviously, you know, like I say, I don't think we've turned the corner because the 2 of the wins, Man United, who have been crap this year, and Ipswich, I know they beat us at home, but they're a poor side. So it'll be a little bit more of a test for us on Wednesday, although, lads, it's City. You know, there is that feeling. And they've got a tough one at Liverpool tomorrow. But I'm looking forward to going on Wednesday. I must say, you know, it was great to see Zach last week, who lives in the States, and he actually is the season ticket holder of the seat that I use about 25 times a season, and he comes over once a season, if that makes sense to you. But so I'll be again in Zach's seat for the Man City game, but was great to catch up and buy him a few beers last week. So yep, and if you need to find me, come and find me in Thailand for the next few weeks. After that,
Jason's had a few episodes where he's number one. I think Jason is either on the coaching staff because he's in the full Spurs kit, or he's being harassed at. I would say not fair saying harassed. He's been asked for selfies at the airport of Thailand, which I think Jason was used to. We started this show and we pressed the play button about 8 years ago, and there was about 50 listeners. Now we've gone to 50,000, 60,000. It's a whole different mindset. You tell me daily, bless you, when I'm on the street, how much you love the show. Look, again, we will always try and reflect how a lot of the fans feel. Jason may not feel like I'm reflecting how a lot of the fans feel at times, but that's why this show is amazing, because we have different opinions. There's so much love here. And that's why Jason has 3 holidays a year to Thailand, because he needs the break from it. Me, I will keep on going and try and deliver you what we can. I want to say a massive thank you to the one and only TJ Ramini. Tej, thank you so much. We love you very much. A lovely positive panel, a lovely positive show, right? We need more of these, please.
Wonderful. God. Absolutely. When I saw the lineup today, I was like, rockstar panel. This is going to be fantastic. Win, lose or draw, it was going to be a magnificent show. And I'm just so delighted that we managed to score 4 today. We're looking like we found our groove again. And what an illustrious panel of wonderful gentlemen, led superbly as ever by you, skipper, Ricky Sachs. Thank you, brother. So lots of love to you all. Thank you to the viewers and the listeners. Please do like and subscribe. It makes a huge difference to Ricky and to the show. I know it's tedious constantly being asked to like and subscribe to things. It is free. Please just take a second just to do that. Let's show him the love that he so deservedly is entitled to. So let's please do that. Thank you, everybody. Lots of love.
Bless you, Tej. Loving you very lots. Tej, thank you so much. Si, thank you. Keep us going, Si. Keep us positive. Keep us on that train, right? Keep me grounded, Si, if you can.
Always.
I'm always
Ricky.
looking.
I'll do anything for you. You know that. You know how much I love you. You know,
I know, man. I know.
I'm gonna create.
You're so grounded. You spend half the season in the sewer. That's where your ground is.
I'm actually opening up a couple of extra accounts right now just to subscribe to the channel. You know,
bless your heart. Si, we love you very much. We're going to see Si, as always, at the end of the season. Loads more games to come. Jace, thank you so much. We're putting Jason back in his box. He'll be coming out very, very soon.
Cheers,
guys,
brother.
Listen, we love you very much, Jason. Look, we've been the last one on Spurs. Over 10,000 of you have checked this show out. We love you very much. Thank you so much for all your incredible support from the brilliant TJ Ramini, from the super Simon Yemane, from the ever calm, composed, not a few words, Jason McGovern. We've been the last one on Spurs. Keep safe, keep well, and as always, come on, you Spurs.